Here we go on part 2 of painting my sunflower field, of blocking it in. Now I will start blocking in the foliage. And toward the back I use mixes of phthalo blue plus a little bit of cadmium yellow medium plus white. That coolness of the blue just makes that go back. In fact, I even need some that's a little bit lighter. Let me mix some more white into that. And this just makes that foliage go back. That back of that field, we want that to just drop back down over the side of the hill. And I just can work around my yellows. But I have to keep wiping my brush. As you can see, my brush picks up some of that yellow. So I want to keep the color clean. This is the reason that I paint the colors of the flower first. Normally, there are exceptions, but most flowers I will block in the blossoms first so that my brush doesn't pick up if I painted the green first, my brush would pick up that green and muddy up my blossom color. So I always, most flowers I do the block in the blossoms first. Flowers first, leaves last. There are exceptions, but normally that's the sequence I work in. And I'm just using these colors to just kind of shape around my masses of yellow. Now that I'm getting a little closer, I'm going to start using a bigger brush and start adding some greens into this. And these greens are mixes of my cadmium yellow medium plus ultramarine blue plus a little bit of white. And I even have a mixture of phthalo blue plus liquid, and this just gives me some darks. Now that's a little too dark in that area, but I can go back and paint over that, and that mutes the darkness. Because as you start coming forward your foliage, you start beginning to see the darkness in the depths of the leaves in between the flowers. But you can see how I can use the corner of that brush to work around my flowers there. As I get closer, then I start being a little more careful around my individual flowers. In the distance, I don't have to be. And what's going to give us the perspective on these flowers is when I add the centers, the dark centers, because those will be put in, they'll be larger in the front and get smaller as they go back. And that will just, all of a sudden, this field will just pop and say, we're a bunch of happy sunflowers out here. If I were going to be a flower, it would definitely be a sunflower. I just can't look at sunflowers without smiling. They just are such a cheerful, happy flower. And they're tenacious. Man, they grow anywhere. I've seen them growing in the middle of a city out of a crack in the concrete. They're determined. Just lots of little dabs in different colors. I have several different greens, as you could see, the different shades of colors I had. And again, I work in some of my phthalo blue in here. Again, you want that foliage as it goes back to be cooler. If you ever have questions, please feel free to ask them. You can just ask them in the comments section. It may take me a day or two to get back to you, but I will answer. I do this for a couple of reasons. One, the first reason I started doing the blog is to help artists. So many people helped both Jack and I when we started our careers. He started his painting in 1970. He taught himself to paint. He went to museums and studied the masters and just practiced and painted, and he taught himself to paint. But he had a lot of people who helped him along the way. Then when I met Jack, I was a medical illustrator, and he said, "I'd love to teach you to paint." And I said, "I'd love for you to." And so he taught me. But again, all along the way, we've had people help us both. And we just feel that God has blessed us with the wonderful gift of being able to make a living as artists. And it's our mission, our responsibility for the gifts that we've been given to give back. You know, we're an artist of nations. We're a nation of artists, excuse me. And it's just, you know, we're here to help each other. No reason to hoard ideas or anything, because we can all look at the same subject and paint it differently. So give a helping hand. You can see we're coming, you can start seeing that field drop back because of the coolness back here in my foliage, the coolness of those yellows. I'm not going to worry too much about my foreground right now. I just want to get, or these flowers up here, I want to get the back of my field in and show you how I do it's just going to take a little more time to do this. I just work around these. But I'm leaving my centers white. And again, I'm going to paint this very thinly up here because that paint will be dry tomorrow and pretty thick, and I don't want to have to try to paint those poppies in the next session over that thick textured paint. So this, I'm going to just kind of wash this in right in here. And that'll make it very easy to paint my poppies when I go back in there. I just take some thinner on my tissue. And then I can also see where I want to bring my poppies up in there. Put a few more leaves in here. And this is some of that phthalo blue plus liquid. That'll also dry quickly. Try to get all those little white spots covered between the flowers. Do this one right here. I'm going to just make this real thin in here. Because again, my poppies are going to be popping up in there. Do a little bit more here. And then I'll do a part 3 showing as I add the centers into the flowers. This covered. I'm going to have 2 sunflowers in here, but that green sort of defines their shape. See, I can use the foliage to define the shapes of my flowers, especially up here in the front. People have asked me, do I make up what I'm working on? And the answer is no. I have my reference material to the side of my easel on my tabouret. I just have a hard time making things up, even as many times as I've painted flowers and sunflowers and whatever. It's still good to refer to the reference. Let's see how this guy kind of bends over here. And again, I'm not going to just paint this real heavy right yet. Okay, and we can just right now soften this in here. So I don't want any hard, thick brush strokes to then try to paint these poppies over that. So when I come back to paint them, I can then paint the rest of this foliage. So there we are, that's part 2. We've got the foliage blocked in. Come back and watch part 3 where I add the centers to the flowers. See you then.